Hey, this is Davin with Hagerty, our Redline Rebuild updates. Working on our Subaru engine, reading the comments, and I feel that I gotta make 2 points very clear. First off, I like all things motors. Yes, is the Subaru my first choice? No. But it's other people's and they're cool, they got their own thing, right? It's okay. It's okay to like something else or at least look at it. Secondly, yes, I tore it apart wrong. And you know what? It came apart still. Now, what I do want to clarify though is I come from the school of tear apart, figure out how it works, put it back together. I'm not necessarily the guy that watches YouTube videos to figure out how to do it. Not that there's anything wrong with it. In fact, we got some really cool ones if you haven't watched all of them yet. Shameless plug, sorry. Now, to that point, I'll address this initially, right off the bat here. If you take this plug out here and the one that's on the other side, then you can access the wrist pin keepers or clips right here. Pop these out, shove the wrist pin through, piston stays in the bore, rods come out as an assembly on the crankshaft. You don't have to take these out with like between the crankshaft, between the block halves. Oops. Again, it came apart. Didn't damage anything. You take your time and you be careful. So this is though the point in every project that it gets a little boring to watch, I will say, but at the same token is where you probably learn the most because as you're taking it apart, A, how does it work? And then B, start looking at all the pieces parts to say, okay, what do I got to replace and what's good and what's bad and all those types of things. So to start with the good is our block is good. Now you're going to see a little bit of surface rust on here and that's because I already ran it through the parts washer and well, it got a little surface rust. Not a big deal. It seems like we should be able to just go through and hone this. So that's the good. The other side is our pistons look pretty good. Now, I myself was a little worried about the skirt condition, but it is my understanding from a Subaru expert here locally that that's just fine. I guess what we're gonna find out is it just fine? Because we're gonna probably have to reuse these pistons. Now, I will be getting fresh rings because, well, to me that'd be right out silly to put old rings in. With that, going down in the assembly, it's my understanding that one of the big problems with Subaru engines, other than the known head gasket issues, is oiling. So basically, as someone is being very exuberant in its speed and running for way too long, basically all the oil goes from the oil pan, gets great pressure, pumps all the volume, and keeps it up top. Well, in this case, on the side, but not in the pan. And what happens is this. You start wearing bearings really bad. So this one's not bad. This one is really close. This was the mate to it. This was really close to spinning. So basically what happens in that function of spinning is you wear down the bearings such that it's too thin. You got a lot of gap to the point where they physically do this. And that makes for a bad day for everyone but the tow truck driver because he's got to put food on the table for his wife and kids. So I guess it's good and bad. But back to this, we're in pretty good shape relative to bearings. Nothing went catastrophic. Now this motor, it appears, was already taken apart at some point in time. And given the look of that car, I can't imagine why. Yeah. It's had fun. You know, of course, we have an aftermarket downpipe. I guess in the day and I say day, when they bought it, this was a fairly expensive downpipe. So we're going to clean it and put it back on. But like the turbo and everything that's over this way, basically looking for in-play on the shaft, everything feels good. It's not wobbly. It turns free. So we're not going to do anything there. Now, obviously, there's all kinds of levels of turbos that you can get, and they go from here to like here on the inlet. And we're gonna play it safe for right now with what we have, because heck, you never know what might happen later on. I was talking about oil. So the common upgrade here on the oiling system is to change the oil pump from the stock WRX one to an STI pump. Basically, it puts out more volume. Now, again, it's got to get back down, so we'll have to address that as well. Water pump, we'll put a fresh water pump in it. Our camshafts look good. So we're excited about that. We don't have to do anything there. Obviously, we will put new seals and everything so we don't have a leaker. This is the adapter for the oil filter. Now, it does have some amount of cooling function in this, but really the bigger issue is it hangs down really low and in all the heat. So it's roughly here, if I remember right. So all the heat's right here, and it's also known that they tend to bump curbs if you're not careful. They actually hang below the body line or the frame line of the car. So we will most likely eliminate that, but I do want to do a little more investigation into that because I know cooler oil is better than hotter oil. So maybe there's something to be gained there in just a different manner. We'll see. Oil pan's good. It'll get a nice coat of paint and cleaned up like always. Then, of course, we're going to put fresh, belt tensioner and belts and all that stuff in there. The head bolts, it's understood that the Subaru head bolts, the stock Subaru head bolts are the best overall. Some of the aftermarket ones have some issues. I don't feel the need to upgrade to a stud in this case, so we're not going to do that. What we are going to do is try to locate some fresh Subaru bolts. These are a torque to yield, so they stretch. And I guess we can reuse them in that world because the idea is that they're already stretched. Now that's, of course, going to be a lot of discussion of right, wrong, or indifferent. From an engineering standpoint, I'm going to tell you, I probably wouldn't do it. But I get the understanding that also it's already taken up, but I know what the point of a stretch bolt is. So I think I'm going to opt for some fresh ones, especially if they're available. Now, I'm not going to stop building the motor because I can't, but I'm in a different situation than you might be. Let's see, lastly, over here we have our cylinder heads. Kind of different from my world. So you got obviously overhead cam, so you have no push rods. The cam lobes push directly on the top of the springs, but they have this, if I can get one out here quickly. It's kind of interesting because the spring is directly underneath it, but obviously it has very small diameter valves. So you wouldn't want the great big cam lobe pushing directly in that little dinky valve because it would, well, it'd generate a lot of heat and some issues. So they put this intermediate piece in here, and this also acts as an adjustable, also acts as an adjustment for your, to take up your lash. So the little cap comes off, and then you can put a shim in between there if needed. It's been highly recommended that I keep these in position. So when I tear this completely apart, I'm gonna label all these, know exactly where they go back in, and put them in the exact same spot when they go back in. Similar to like we do on a hydraulic flat tabby camshaft, you put those lifters back in the same hole if you're gonna reuse them and the cam, because you would cause some premature wear on them. Normal process, we're gonna go through and refurbish these cylinder heads. We will deck this surface, make sure it's nice and flat, and of course address any issues that we have with these valves. Now overall, things look pretty good, but we're gonna let Mark be the expert on that and tell us, you know, what it really needs, because he's done a couple. Going forward here, my rockauto.com tip of the day is rods. Direction makes a difference. And no, silly, I don't mean pistons down and rod up. What I'm talking about is how they go on the crankshaft. So whether you're building a small block Chevy, big block Chevy, Chrysler, Ford, you name it, Buick, Subaru, these rods make a difference of the direction they face. So what I found out with Subaru is there's this little mark right here, this, call it a swoosh triangle. Almost more like a Star Trek version. But at any rate, that goes towards the front of the motor. And if I am the front of the motor, it points toward me. And of course, sideways. I'm not, that's another discussion. Now, moving forward for me today, go get some potato chips and a beverage of some fashion, because I'm gonna go into the vapor hone and the sandblast cabinet and the parts washer and start cleaning all these up. And it's gonna be a bit, but it's kind of fun. It's relaxing. Yeesh. Put on some music. Here we go. Let's take this one. Well, here we have what amounts to is about 3 hours worth of preparation on our one half here of the block. Obviously, it started looking nasty like this, and now it's this interesting, clean gray color. So my process was I put it through the dry blast to get all this real heavy stuff off, and that has some Arnett type material in there, so it's fairly abrasive. And then I put it in the vapor hone, and it honestly looked this color. What's interesting is after about 20 minutes in our jet wash, it turned to this dark gray color, which is actually kind of cool. So we'll put some clear coat on it. Of course, after it's all machined, after it's been honed, ideally, and we do all of our washing after that. We'll see how things work out and what it looks like, but that is the process and what we're going to be looking at when we're all done. Now, I know that was probably as fun as watching, I don't even want to say paint dry, because at least that's an interesting color. But with all the nooks and crannies, it takes a lot of time, and you got to angle around and all that jazz. But that's part of the process. That's what you have to do. You could certainly send this out and have somebody else do it, but you will more than pay for your sandblasting cabinet on the first job because, well, time, and time is money. Well, with this half clean, that just means I got a whole bunch more to get done. So as I go off and get some more parts cleaned, get out in your shop and go get some work done. And what I mean by shop is just anywhere you choose to work on your project or your daily driver or whatever it is, go have fun, enjoy it. It's a beautiful day. See ya. This is quite ugly though. Yeah. Yuck.